This is going to be the uncut version. George, fuck you.
Let me just get my shoes off.
What are you doing here?
Putting up my flies. There we go.
Okay. They'll always be in England, George. What's up?
I love this book.
Take two.
I hate this book. So epigrams. Why epigram? You don't have much place to hide when you've got like 2 lines.
No, it's a terrible thing. It was actually an inoculation. I was abducted by the great epigrammist La Rochefoucauld. And, what do they call that? Stockholm syndrome.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I kind of went over to the other side.
You left your hostage taker.
That's it. They were a disease that hit me maybe when I was about 50. Picked up a copy of La Rochefoucauld's Maxims again. Suddenly that was the food I wanted to eat. And it never was the only thing I did. I kept writing other kinds of books, but it just became this sort of left-hand passion for the last almost 20 years now.
There's an interesting one here, when you say, in fact, even just the first one, number 1, he said, he was on top of her, she was underappreciated.
Yeah.
And you're a married man and, everyone tries to sort of reveal the writer. So are you feeling appreciated? I mean, it's a lovely turn of phrase, right? Because you could be underappreciated. That's or right. You could be underappreciated. So do you think these are appreciated, or do you think this is appreciated? Or
this form?
Mm-hmm.
This is the 5th book of these I've done.
Blimey.
And you have to be crazy to set out to publish a book of epigrams.
Right.
And then why not just get out while you're ahead? And some people wonder why I do them, and aren't they a bit mean? And some people don't get them, which is a little tiring. Because as a comedian, to explain a joke is it's already dead.
Yes, indeed. right. If you're explaining, you're losing.
That's very funny. If you're explaining, you're losing.
And as a comedian, and I know you're a fan of comedy. Like the classic thing is set up punchline, and these are kind of almost punchlines without setup. So it's almost like boom, here it is. Which is remarkable.
But I just don't understand you, said the man who believed he understood himself. People say stuff and they don't hear what they're saying, and so part of the fun for me is to be listening to what they say and then to try to play with it.
And do you do that by sort of going out into the world and sort of, or do you...
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. You turn on the TV and rent it?
I think it was with my wife that I first said we had made love or something, and I said that she was underappreciated.
Very nice. I gotta write that down. But then, 5 pages later, we said less that he wanted a divorce and more that for his wife he wished for a new husband.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a sort of happiness comes through, and sometimes a sort of curmudgeonliness comes through, and I'm sort of just trying to understand a little bit about, I guess where your heart lies.
It doesn't tell the truth.
You found your place in the world and your gift to share, which must be, a huge relief for your mother and father. Do you know what I mean? That here is your place, and you found. I mean, some people don't find their calling.
I wouldn't call it a gift to share, because artists have to make other people share their gift. It's a kind of coercion. You know what I mean? Would that it were sharing. There's a famous book called The Gift by Lewis Hyde, and he's talking about art as a gift, to the community. Well, there's a billion comedians who would like to share their gift. I thought that, but when I was coming on to girls, I'd like to share my gift. So, Freud, they say, no sexual intercourse after age 40. Gandhi, celibate from age 36 on. Draw the correct inference. Well, what is the correct inference?
Right, what exactly?
But that's my point. I don't know. People have all kinds of ideas about chi, sexual chi, and achievement. And I'm saying, let's think about it. Here's one I love. With fuck you, the I is silent and well understood. With fuck you, the I is silent and well understood. Well, actually, it isn't well understood. A lot of people don't realize that when someone says fuck you to someone, they're saying, I fuck you.
Right.
That's really what's being said.
Right.
So to me, I hear the phrase fuck you and I say, well, what's really being said here? Who's doing what to whom?
Right.
It's not go fuck yourself. That isn't it. That's different. That's a different phrase.
Yeah. No, for sure. Well, and the interesting thing is, you sort of seem to be, you say the I is silent and well understood, but it's not well understood.
No.
So there's a whole bunch of things that draw the correct inference. Well,
I'm kind of
I feel like you're
messing
fucking with me now. Is it well understood?
No.
Now I'm just feeling dumb because I'm like, I didn't understand that. Well, I'm not alone. It turns out.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, hey, think about it. Yeah.
I'm a student from Denmark, and I'm looking for people that I can look to and say, oh, he really changed the world, or made sort of a way how he thought he could change the world. So is there anything, what can I learn from you?
Well, what does art teach us?
Yeah.
My kind of art might, if it's good, teach about accuracy and truth in language, right? A lot of language, particularly political language, but a lot of personal language is untrue. So working in this form might teach someone, might help them understand better how to hear what someone else is saying, what they're really saying, or how to speak more honestly or clearly themselves. It might also help someone be more aware of their own motivations. In other words, we often think we're right when we're blind to our own behavior. If you were interested in the music of the English language, this might be of some value.
When I finished reading this, I didn't think, whoa, I'm so lucky to be in this world. I'm so happy to be in a relationship. And are you disillusioned?
Oh, I think you can't be a human and live very long without knowing a lot about human shortcomings, right? But I think you can also savor what's beautiful. In the essay at the end, I quote Jonathan Swift. I tell you, after all, that I do not hate mankind. It is vous autres, you others, who hate them because you would have them be reasonable animals and you're angry at being disappointed. So he was saying his expectations were lower than Alexander Pope's, but it also didn't, it made him hate them, not hate them, but he did want to describe what was horrible in the things they did. Later in the same essay, I wrote that epigrammatists have to remember, beholders of human beings do generally discover everybody's face but their own. That if love can only express itself by hatred for the inappropriate, then one may come to resemble what he hates. And then finally, William Matthews, this wonderful American poet, wrote, from the Roman poet Martial, I learned foremost how important it is to find ways to be angry with human folly and failure and to be forgiving of it at the same time. If you've been in the Mideast, you've seen a lot of terrible things. But you're there because you want to do good, I presume. And so how do you both see the terrible things done on all sides in the recent history of the Middle East, and still try to have a faith that you can make change and do good things?
Yeah, as I said, I've been very focused the past months on human rights and how can we make a better world. And suddenly there was a lot, in the beginning there's a lot about, I felt sort of about intimacy, man and woman, sex. And then suddenly this came and it sort of stood out and was very different to me. Is it very different?
A lot of the epigrams are about human foible and human failing and human foolishness. And of course, George Bush might be considered the essence of a lot of human failings. And any American who lived through the Bush administration, of course, was ashamed of so many terrible things that were done. So he fits in the book because the book is often about human error. In year 6 of Operation Iraqi Freedom, George Bush said, I'm a man of peace. How could you say such a thing and be at year 6 of a war? And how could you have avoided combat but be planning a war?
I have a question about the title, hesitation marks.
The epigraphs that start the book, I have 2 quotes. So one of them describes dashes. Okay, and dashes are a form of hesitation mark. They make us slow down in a sentence. And the epigrams are meant to slow you down. But it turns out there's another definition, that when someone's thinking about suicide, they make a first cut. And sometimes that's the only cut they make because they decide that this is too painful or too horrible, and that is the mark they made. So that caused them to hesitate. But sometimes, actually, they make a hesitation mark and then they continue, right? So I must have been surprised when I came across that explanation of that term, hesitation mark, which isn't commonly known. It's not a secret, but I had never heard it, and I read a lot. And so I think when I thought about the dual aspect of that phrase, that it could be either something to do with grammar or something to do with something, a darkness in human possibility, then I thought it would somehow catch different qualities of the epigrammatic, because they're kind of cutting and dark, but they also are meant to give you pause.
Because it's my first time to read epigrams, I felt that, like you said, it's very precise, it's short, and it sort of leaves things out that
Yes.
we take this break to sort of think, what is it they're
They're
really
very-
about?
They're very argumentative too, because they're precluding a lot of kind of storytelling. Like they're so short, they're saying this is the whole story. Well, of course, nothing can be the whole story like that. So they're kind of, in a way, they're a bit of a violence against the reader, because they're saying, hey, this is the whole thing, when it isn't the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's just a fragment of a kind of truth, right?
Yeah.
But also, I don't think when I was your age, how old are you?
24.
Oh, I don't think I would have liked the epigrammatic when I was young, this kind of thing, because I think it's too dark. And I think I was more full of just sheer life force. Don't be in a rush to be more drawn to them than you are. Save them for later. Save them for marriage. Anyway, yeah, thanks so much, Mia.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
For having me.
You described the process of conception, how you come up with the idea of epigram. But it's not a birth yet. Do you sit at the table and polish it, or does it come up as close to final form as
Right.
it is in the book?
So the epigrams are in part getting into the right head, where you're listening to language for things that surprise you, and you're looking for qualities of human behavior, and you're kind of keeping an eye out. So I do a lot of reading. I read various epigramists, but I read a lot of books about human psychology and so on. So, for instance, I read a book about hypochondria. And one of the fun things, let's say, about hypochondria is it's almost always other people who are hypochondriacs. I am merely concerned with my health, but she is a hypochondriac.
Yes.
Well, so you see that when I'm reading about hypochondria, I'm already looking to implicate myself, or to see the ways in which I don't implicate myself, and to see where it might lead me to make a comment about human behavior. So the epigrams really start in part with this attentiveness and this curiosity. So now I'm reading a book on hypochondria because I hit the word hypochondria, and now I want to know like the history of the word and what can I learn? And then I get to this idea that hypochondria is almost always other people. That's very funny to me. Well, I don't get an epigram out of that. And then the word hypochondria is just kind of bombulating in my mind, and I go back to my page of fragments of epigrams and ideas for them, and I see the word hypochondria, and this time suddenly it comes to me, overkill.
Just like that.
Yeah, that one is just, that's the way that happened. So then that's it. And I say, oh, wow, hypochondria, overkill. And I don't think it's been said quite that way before, and I don't think it can be said more succinctly. So that's one way they happen. If you're going to write about love and human affection, you're going to end up writing about jealousy or thinking about it, its qualities. And so for years, among other subjects, I've been interested in what people have to say about jealousy. So I have a prepared mind on the subject of jealousy. And jealousy, a lot of it has to do with triangles. It takes three people to make jealousy, right? And so triangles, that idea's in my head for years. and then I start thinking about it. And,
Right.
and there is a kind of triangle called a right triangle, and then suddenly it comes to me, jealousy's geometry. See, because now we're talking geometry. Jealousy's geometry, no right triangles. And so I get to play on the word right.
But does it happen to you that you come up with the idea and you still have to sit and polish it like jeweler does with a precious stone to make it shine?
Oh, sure. The hyperbolist choking, superlative stuck in the craw of his better self. Okay, well, there's a lot going on in that. And the craw is here, but craw is not a word we hear anymore. But I want a violent word. I don't want to say stuck in his throat.
Yes.
I don't want to say, so it takes a while to get craw. And there is no, we don't have a common word, hyperbolist. We do have the word hyperbole, but now I'm making a noun. The hyperbolist choking, so now I have to really envision it. How does it work? I'm angry at a person who uses hyperboles too easily. I've come up with hyperbole and then a hyperbolist. That's part of it. Now I try to envision it. I really want the hyperbolist to be sickened by his own hyperbole. But no, not sickened, choking. So the hyperbolist choking, and now how does it work? Superlative, I had to come up with that word. A superlative stuck in the craw, and I need craw because I need a strong word of his. And then what? Stuck where? In the craw of his what? His better self.
Better self.
Yeah, so that one took a series of steps to get to. Yeah.
You mentioned that epigram makes you stop and think. In a form of pure epigram, like it's in your book, it certainly does. And the format of book, I believe, also suggests it. That's why so many empty spaces. It's a space for me to think.
Yeah.
Here is spot for you to say something. Here is a huge space for the reader to contemplate on it, to meditate on it. But what do you think about some other forms of epigram? Let's take Mark Twain, or rather, let's take Lewis Carroll, whose book is full of epigram material.
Yes.
It is all about wordplay, but he doesn't let people stop. He push or maybe pull the reader down the line of the story. You literally don't have time to stop and think about this epigram. You have to read it again and again and find more and more jewels.
Yes.
What do you think about these two forms? Epigram, as you put it, and epigrams hidden in the
text.
In the text.
Yeah. About the white space, all the white space. So the white space is very argumentative. It's saying, look, you need this white space to let this epigram work on you. You cannot just rush along. Now, of course, this is like poetry. A lot of poetry uses a lot of white space. It too is argumentative. The poet is saying, this is a sonnet or something even shorter, some lyric poem, and it requires the white space for you to understand it. So the epigrammist is a little bit like a cousin of the poet, but even more so. I like that challenge. It was a writer named Stephen Mitchell who, when I first started playing with epigrams, and I gave him some pages of my epigrams, he said, the way to test them is to put them one or two to a page. And you'll see if they can take the weight of that space. And that was a very wise thing, I thought. As for a writer like Lewis Carroll, right now I'm reading an American writer, a poet who's famous in his day in the 40s and 50s named Randall Jarrell. And he wrote a book, a novel called Pictures of an Institution, a very satirical novel about a college, a women's college, like Sarah Larn. It is brilliant, and he's a brilliant epigrammist. Sentence after sentence, he expresses things I would love to claim as my own. He has one where the observation is that the character cannot be a hypocrite because he's not morally developed enough yet. He simply thinks that whatever he is good. How could he be a hypocrite? And so Jarrell, if Jarrell were alive, I would send him my epigram books because I feel he would get what I was doing. But also, he's like profligate in this abundance of what he can do. maybe I just can't do it as much as some of these writers. Yeah, maybe my use of white space is a form of self-defense. I don't know.
The epigram about source amnesia.
Oh yes, source amnesia.
Does it come from personal experience?
Source amnesia, as when you offer a sexual surprise to your lover, she asks, "Where did you learn that?" Okay, that comes because I saw the phrase somewhere, source amnesia. So now I've heard a phrase that's new to me. So then I start to think, well, how would I define it to someone? And of course, those of us who have been bachelors and have dated more than one woman at a time, you may know something of this, Victor.
You did?
You did? Victor, I can't believe you would do such a thing.
Oh, well.
So that, sometimes you actually have to be a little careful what move you introduce into what situation. I thought, I'll try to build an epigram out of this. So, but it starts with hearing this phrase, source amnesia, and my laughing to think, what could that possibly mean? How would I define that if someone asked me? And so I'm defining it. Source amnesia as when you offer a sexual surprise to your lover, she asks, "Where did you learn that?" Kathy, I want to thank you, for your kind words that we used as a blurb on the back of the jacket, and you called attention to the phrase, riddled with perfection. And I want to read just the paragraph. Head on pillow. It all happened for a reason, the epigrammist mutters, marveling that people can believe such things. And drifting off to sleep, he thinks, riddled with perfections, expecting when he wakes to write it down. And of course, what I was playing with was the way we know that phrase is riddled with imperfections.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, riddled itself just means tattered and ragged and uncertain, and perfection means just the opposite.
To turn the phrase around and reawakens us to the idiom, and then maybe takes us to someplace exciting and new, to be riddled with perfection.
Exactly.
So that was, yeah.
Well, that's what I love about your writing, because just about every one of these is like a splash of cold water, because it's unexpected, it turns things around. Also they are epigrams to be read with a group. We did this the other day. There were 4 or 5 people driving to Nevada, and we read them out loud, and everybody was affected by them differently. Everyone had a different interpretation. Everyone took them in some different way. Where is the one about 2 breasts in the hand?
1957, mantra of a 13-year-old boy. A breast in the hand is worth 2 in the bra.
Well, it seems very forthright and matter of fact, but it could be 2 breasts or 2 hands. And so that led to a lot of discussion.
Yes.
It's just every one of these opened up into individual interpretation.
That's shocking. That gives it more complexity than I had imagined.
Well, are you happy with people
Yeah.
reinterpreting?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just the vehicle of the muse, and I wasn't. And my vehicle wasn't even a van going to Nevada. No, that's wonderful. Yeah, it's true that working in such a narrow form or a tight, constrained form, you often don't see its reverberations.
If you read Bierce or
Yeah.
Wilde or Nietzsche or any of them, there's nothing really happy about the epigram. You don't get many exclamation marks or smile faces. They seem to be a more...
Yeah, Bierce was a peculiarly bitter man, and he, as I say, he erased himself. He was such an epigrammist that he shortened himself to nothing. He just disappears one day, right? But definitely that European tradition of the epigram is tart, ironic, really a form of defense of the individual against common misunderstanding or common untruth. Yeah.
Yeah, hallmark sentiment.
Yes. There's one that I like so much because it got said something I had to get said. Jeez, what an elusive epigram. These are harder to find than to write.
Oh, that's an epigram.
The hyperbolist choking, superlative stuck in the craw of his better self. And I was actually thinking of a real person who I referred to in the essay at the end, Dr. Wayne Dyer, who's a well-known PBS self-improver. And he writes, in one of his introduction to one of his books. He's written 30 books. Wayne spent one entire year reading, researching, and meditating on Lao Tzu's messages, and ultimately writing down these essays as he felt Lao Tzu wanted you to know them. As Wayne says, this is a book that will forever change the way you look at your life. Writing this book changed me forever too. And I go on to say, forever. How clean the stables of such talk.
That's
Okay,
wonderful.
so, but I wasn't done with him.
Mm-hmm.
He had affronted me, and in a world of people like him, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote, okay, so it's hyperbole to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
forever, and hyperbole kills you. I mean, there could be a whole category called death by hyperbole. Right? So the hyperbolist, so I imagine what could happen to someone who uses too many hyperboles of the kind I just did. The hyperbolist choking, and what would he choke of? A superlative stuck in the craw of his better self. Because craw is one of those good, honest words,
It is,
right?
definitely.
And so it's the opposite of a hyperbole. Right?
Uh-huh.
So,
And
yeah.
you could have actually stopped at Craw, but you went even better, and you used his better self.
I escalated, by
Yeah.
insisting he had a better self. You're
Yeah.
right. The hyperbolist choking,
that's wonderful.
superlative stuck in the craw of what?
Yeah.
His better self.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
he pissed me off big time.
Well, you actually, that was interesting, because I was going to ask you how you come to write certain epigrams, and obviously Dyer irritated you, and you then went and did this. Is that the usual?
No, it's not. It's sometimes, it's often not so direct. Sometimes it's just wordplay.
Mm-hmm.
I hear an idiom, I'm reawakened to that. But
Mhm.
sometimes, it is a provocation in the world, this whole New Age stuff. And the fact that New Age people, and Buddhists, I might add, write so many, many books about how to improve your life forever, that you want to just get out a shovel and start doing your best in the stables.
I had one thought that struck me. Oh, this one right here. This one seems a little bit different.
Where is right here?
Not 49.
Thank you. I was going to
You're right here.
get on my Ouija board. Yeah.
Most of them are concise within
Yeah.
themselves, but this one about the old, something's coming, 1,000, 2, 1,000, that seems like a different thought.
The old, something's coming. 1,000, 2, 1,000. And the way it is, like in a child's game, you count presumably to 10.
Yeah.
And it's over.
Yeah.
And so is that what the old are doing? They're counting 1,000 and they know it's actually pretty finite.
Yeah.
Yeah, it isn't going to go
Yeah.
to 1 million, is it?
Yeah.
No.
Do you dream in epigrams?
No, but I have thoughts, and I get up. I have pen and paper, and I have two categories of night thoughts: dread and dreader. that's not true.
So I was really intrigued by the wordplay and the investigation to the roots of words and how words evolve. In particular, on page 13.
Masturbation, from the Greek mensa, penises, and the Latin tubare, to disturb, or from the Latin mano stupare, to defile with the hand. Manustupration, infrequently used term for the ubiquitous incessant.
So how do you begin to build an epigram like that?
Well, I guess like many people, I've always thought that the word masturbation made something clinical out of, something that was a lot nicer than that. Do all languages get stuck with this Latinate term? And, self-pleasuring came in there like in the, 70s or 80s, and was seemed to me a very ideological effort to, to get a warmer and fuzzier term. So I guess the word masturbation has never ceased to sound to me too weighty for the phenomenon or too clinical for the phenomenon.
Do you cross-reference different reference books, or is there one particular dictionary you turn to?
Webster's second, the big, huge thing you used to see in libraries. My mom's dictionary. That's my Bible.
Similarly, I see that some of your epigrams take the form of like dictionary entries. So for example, on page 5,
Tango, envy. It takes two.
How did you come to that kind of form? Because I see that coming up, and I think I've seen it in the earlier books of epigrams.
Envy is an emotion that is like masturbation. It's everywhere, but it's unacknowledged a lot of the time. And so I like to investigate the qualities of envy or its ubiquitousness. And so you can't have envy just from one person. It takes an object. So there, I'm thinking about envy in two people, and then that song popped into my head. Well, it takes two to tango, and that's how I got to that one.
One last question. 51.
How to tell she's your moral superior? She'll let you know it.
What's the story behind that one?
A friend of mine was telling me that there are two kinds of people in the world, and I said to him, "Oh, what is that?" And he said, "People who are generous and people who aren't." And I realized he was including himself in the category of the generous, and that I wouldn't have come to that conclusion so quickly. So that was kind of bombulating around my wicked brain. And then I just tweaked it, and changed gender, just, for the heck of it. And then went to moral superior because that's kind of what I felt was being said. Yeah.
Now, this is more than an epigram on page 23. Young biologist, just
Oh,
married,
yeah.
and suddenly avid library researcher.
Yeah.
Female chimpanzees, he's learning,
Yeah.
vocalize before and during penetration. Evolutionary advantage in screams and grunts, stimulating partners, blurring paternity to gain multiple protectors, allowing competing sperm access. So, young biologist, library, copulation calls. At home the night before, finally achieving orgasm by penetration, his bride had cried out, "I'm coming! Everybody, I'm coming!"
Really what I'm thinking about is, all the stuff that's in people's heads when they're making love. And often there are other people in people's heads.
But let me tell you something.
Okay.
And there would be an epigram from this. I was once making love with a woman, and there was part of me that was backing off from the experience. I have to recognize this.
Mm-hmm.
I have to recognize this. I had a defense going on to not participate with her while we were in the act of making love.
Yes.
And a thought crossed my mind. I forget what it was, but it was a thought. And right there, in that moment, I thought, God, this thought is really important.
Yeah.
This is the most important thought I've had in my life, and it's happening right now. And because I had to focus completely on that thought, but that was my way of getting away from her.
And you lost the thought.
I don't know what the thought was.
Tragedy. Tragedy. Famous,
I'm searching for that thought.
that's right. The whole rest of your life,
Maybe if I find that woman and have sex with her again,
Yeah.
it'll come back to me.
that would be nice. Yeah.
But who is the woman?
You can't. No. Lenny. This is not good. And I also want to say, shame on you. In fact, I'd like to turn to the camera and say,
Oh man, this is sad.
Which one is that?
Page 52. Jesus.
This is sad.
Oh no, there's a picture. There's a whole novel right there. Can I read it?
Please, please.
Upscale restaurant, celebrating her birthday, dining alone, a party of one. That's lovely because it's so evocative
Yeah.
of so much.
And of course, it all comes from that phrase, when you go to a restaurant, yes, it's a party of two, a party of three, and they say a party of one.
Yeah.
And of course, a party of one never sounds like a party, does it?
I want to give her a hug.
I'm a scientist.
I thought you were a mathematician.
Well, yes, mathematics is part of science.
I see.
And
I didn't get that far in school.
So in science, for example, in physics, we know that all matter consists of atoms.
Yeah.
So, and as a scientist, you would like to go to you can find the smallest building blocks of the universe. So you have atoms, and then you ask, what does atom consist of?
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out that there is nucleus, and then there are electrons spinning around. So for me, I approach literature subconsciously, I guess, in a similar way. So I'm wondering, what is the indivisible particle of literature, of writing? And for me, an epigram is such an atom,
Right.
like in physics. And a good epigram for me is something which you cannot further divide. You cannot break it into smaller pieces. So is
It's
that
true.
something that...
I would like to say no, after all of that buildup. But, well, actually, there are these people called language poets. This guy, Aram Soroyan, wrote a one-word poem, Lighght, light, Lighght. That was his whole poem. And he showed it to his father, the great novelist William Soroyan, and who was not impressed. But, so if we go past the one-word language poetry kind of stuff, yeah, I think epigram aspires to be a prime number. And you know what a prime number is.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you tell us? I'm here to see if you really deserve tenure. Yeah, but a prime number, in my high school understanding, is something that's not divisible by anything else.
That's right, except one in itself.
Yeah, and one's not a number, we know.
Well, that's another story.
That is another story.
Which we could discuss.
Yeah, but okay, so the epigram aspires to be irreducible.
Right.
And I would say in some of them, I'm sure of it. Like when I get to that epigram, hypochondria, overkill, I feel as though we can't make it much terser than that, right?
Mm.
Yeah. But of course, even the longer ones, some of them, I'm hoping that the sentiment can't be said more succinctly and still take us as deep as it's going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Truth be told, the first book of your epigrams, which I have read, I think there
Yes.
was another one. There's this epigram, which I thought I invented.
Sex, what puts you in contact with people you might otherwise never know. What you discovered, Edward, was the thought. But I discovered the epigram.
Some of them I resonate with me because of my being a mathematician, like this one.
What's,
I'll let you read it.
oh, jealousy's geometry, no right triangles. Yeah. You can see where my math stops. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what does it mean?
There's always the threat, I think, of being triangulated in love. And that's what we suffer from. That's what it is to be
So
human.
it's never a right triangle.
No triangle for those in love is ever a right triangle.
A right triangle. Speaking of jealousy, this reminds me of another epigram which I love. Jealousy, requiring proof for something that never happened.
Yeah. That's one of them. Yes, that's true.
How do you explain what is jealousy? You can write, many volumes as people have.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can just go straight to the point. And to me, this is what this epigram does. In one sentence, they essentially said, asking for proof of what never happened.
It's one, of course, it's only one aspect of jealousy because jealousy is often a form of understatement. You see, you're jealous of someone and you don't even know the whole truth, but you're right. You're onto something. Jealousy equals self-knowledge, indicted for hyperbole, guilty of understatement, demanding proof of what never happened. If you know you're capable of betraying someone, then you can project and see and be jealous of what others are doing. Jealousy indicted for hyperbole, guilty of understatement. That is sometimes jealousy actually underestimating what's going on. It's worse than you think. Think of Tiger Woods' wife right now. She was jealousy of one text message he was delivering, and now it turns out that she was totally underestimating the situation.
Overestimating.
Yeah. And jealousy, demanding proof of what never happened, yes. False modesty, the truest thing about him. Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. Well, I like phrases like false modesty, and I just like playing with them and kind of...
False, true, false.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
You can see where I'm coming from again. It's very mathematical.
Where's the mathematics in there?
False and
Oh,
also mathematical logic.
You mean false and true is like at the heart of mathematics?
Yeah, of course.
Oh. I didn't get that far.